I've been a journalist in this area for 25 years, and during that time it has gone from having a pretty robust middle class to being an area where you see this great divide of wealthy and poor. And nowhere do you see that more than in the Silicon Valley, where 25 years ago this was a place of orchards and farms and ranching and small businesses, and it has completely changed now so that you have incredibly wealthy people and incredibly poor people and a growing gap. Homelessness has increased dramatically in the shadow of Google, in the shadow of Oracle, in the shadow of Apple Computer. You have people who are hungry.
People had this belief that somehow that Silicon Valley was paved with gold. And I would even say my parents, coming from New Mexico all those years ago when I was very small, I mean, they came here looking for opportunity. They wanted to be in a place that it didn't matter what their ethnicity or culture was. It didn't matter what their class was, that they really could put their stake in the ground, buy a home, and grow a family. I think that's a dream that a lot of people come to Silicon Valley with. And one of the problems is it's not like that for everybody. We have really been a tale of two cities for really a long time.
Our economic expansion is pretty staggering. People have referred to it as the longest, most sustained, largest legal wealth creation in the history of the planet. We have very high income, highest in the nation. We also have very low. We've got both. And what's actually happening right now is a hollowing out in the middle. Now, this is a national phenomenon, but it seems to be particularly acute in Silicon Valley. We're still generating on the high end of engineers and scientists and coders, but the support positions, manufacturing, you're not going to see that in Silicon Valley anymore.
They would manufacture silicon chips there in the early days. And I was just the other day looking for anybody making wafers anymore, and there's not.
So I used to work with National Semiconductor. I worked in masking. I made that silicon chip. I'm the one who put the programs on that chip. I'm the one who inspected them. I've cleaned houses. I've taken care of disabled people. I'm 54 years old. I've got nothing.
So what happened was in the Silicon Valley 15 years ago during the first boom, for every 5 jobs they were adding, they were building 2 units of housing. So that jacked up the housing prices to what fights for the most expensive housing in the country. Sometimes it's first place, sometimes it's second place. People who had blue-collar jobs were getting paid 10, 15, 20 bucks an hour. And when their jobs went away, they were largely unskilled and could take jobs that paid $9.50 an hour. That would be the minimum wage in San Jose for the past 15 years. As of last week, they raised it to $10 an hour. Now, on that type of wages, you can't rent an apartment, you can't buy food, and you can't handle the transportation expenses, which can be very high. And so you end up, in some cases, you find people living 3 or 4 families to an apartment, or people move into homeless shelters, or people leave the area.
This is my tent. This is where I live. I got my transportation, my bike. I have electricity that I run by car battery. I worked at a restaurant at Google. They have, I don't know, I guess like 16 or 18 full-blown restaurants you can go eat at when you work there for free. I never heard of that in my life. They started doing background checks and did a background check on me. I'm a convicted felon, so they couldn't keep me there anymore. Right now, I do yard work for people, stuff like that. I find bikes and I fix them up and resell them.
In many communities, you see the homeless people. You see them living in the streets. You see them begging downtown or busking. In the Silicon Valley, this is a lot of freeway living, and the homeless people, they live along the creeks or in parks, but where people aren't going to see them, so it's more of a hidden problem.
We had a family visit us that mother, father, and 3 children, and they are homeless. And they're homeless because the father is a gardener. He works 3 days a week. He makes $75 every day he works. The mother lost her job in manufacturing. It took 1 paycheck to move them from their apartment onto the street. And that's true for a lot of families in our community. At some point, and I do worry about this, like I think Is it all of a sudden that the country splits in half? Are we creating literally two Americas?
Silicon Valley has the brain power and has the risky personality to do some really innovative things when it comes to poverty. And I even think there's a will to do this, but I think that there is a lack of awareness and hopefully a growing awareness, because I do think that there's been brilliance out of that region that has changed the world. So wouldn't it be something if that area could also be the one that sparks the brilliance that starts to solve this really major problem?